It is a ritual for a catastrophe so fast, so total, that there is no time for anything but muscle memory. Every year, in a small American town, thousands of children stop what they are doing, get up from their desks, and walk. They walk in single-file lines, away from their schools, away from their homes, climbing steadily uphill. There is no fire. There is no active shooter. The threat is silent, beautiful, and looms over their entire existence. It's Mount Rainier. And they are practicing how to outrun a mountain that is trying to kill them. What you are witnessing is the largest, most organized volcano evacuation drill on the planet. But here's the terrifying part they don't tell you at first. These children are not practicing for an eruption. They are practicing for a sunny Tuesday afternoon when the mountain simply decides to collapse under its own weight. Before we go any further, comment below with a single word: prepare or move. What would you do if you lived in a place like this? Let us know what you think. This is not a theoretical exercise. It is a dress rehearsal for a very specific kind of death that has happened here before and will happen again. Almost everyone who watches these briefings finds them critical, yet a surprising number of people forget to subscribe. This isn't just content. It is essential information. To ensure you don't miss the next analysis of a critical event, take 1 second and click subscribe. It is the only way to guarantee you stay informed. Let's begin. The town is Orting, Washington. Population just over 9,000. It sits in a lush, green valley 30 miles northwest of the most heavily glaciated peak in the contiguous United States. By every measure of aesthetic beauty, it is an idyllic place to live. By every measure of geological science, it is a death trap. The town is built entirely on the debris of a monster known as a lahar. A lahar is not a flood. It is not mud. To call it a mudflow is a dangerously misleading understatement. A lahar is a slurry of rock, ice, and earth that behaves like a river of wet concrete. Imagine a substance with the density of cement, carrying boulders the size of houses and entire forests of uprooted trees. Moving down a river valley at 50 miles an hour. It does not flow around obstacles. It removes them. It does not wash things away. It buries them under 100 feet of rock-hard deposit that can set in minutes. This is not water you can swim in. This is a churning, grinding mass so thick it can shear steel bridges from their foundations and erase entire towns from the map. Us scientists who study the phenomenon are blunt. A former researcher, Kevin Scott, famously stated that homes in this area are in greater risk of being hit by a mudflow from Mount Rainier than of catching on fire. And the source of this threat isn't the volcano's fire, it's its rot. Mount Rainier is a 14,410-foot stratovolcano, a geological giant. But it is a giant that is quietly decaying from the inside out. For millennia, acidic volcanic gases and superheated water have been seeping through the mountain's core. This process, called hydrothermal alteration, is like a cancer eating away at the rock. It has been cooking the solid stone, chemically transforming it into a weak, unstable clay. Over 1 cubic mile of glacial ice sits on top of this rotting rock, a truly biblical weight of frozen water, grinding down on a foundation that is growing softer and more slippery with each passing year. The mountain doesn't need to erupt to unleash a lahar. All it needs is for gravity to win. An earthquake, a steam explosion, or even just a catastrophic failure of the weakened rock itself can trigger a massive landslide on the volcano's upper slopes. This is what volcanologists call a no-notice, or unheralded collapse. One moment, the mountain stands silent. The next, a sector of its flank shears off, instantly melting a massive volume of glacier ice on its way down. That water mixes with the landslide debris, and in minutes a lahar is born, screaming down the river channels that radiate from the peak like spokes on a wheel. Think about that for a moment. A river of concrete. What's the most powerful force of nature you've ever witnessed. Describe it in the comments. Two of those spokes, the Puyallup and Carbon rivers, point directly at Orting. The town is nestled right at their confluence, in a valley that acts as a perfect natural funnel for anything descending from Rainier's western flank. Geologists looking at maps of the region didn't need complex models to see the danger. They were looking at history. The very ground Orting is built upon is the grave of a previous landscape. It is the hardened remnant of a massive lahar called the Electron mudflow, which surged down this exact valley approximately 500 years ago, around 1507 AD. There is no eruption then, either. The mountain just fell apart. Before that, around 5,600 years ago, the volcano's summit collapsed in an even bigger event, unleashing the Osceola mudflow. It was a flow so immense, it was 460 feet deep, lopped 2,000 feet off the top of the volcano, and buried the land all the way to Puget Sound. Orting isn't just in the path of the next lahar. It is living on the corpse of the last one. This grim reality might have remained a niche academic concern if it weren't for a tragedy that unfolded half a world away. A tragedy that became the foundational horror story for every volcano preparedness plan in the modern world. The date was November 13th, 1985. The place was Armero, Colombia. Like Orting, Armero was a thriving agricultural town that sat in a river valley some 50 miles from a snow-capped volcano, the Nevado del Ruiz. For months, the volcano had been showing signs of unrest. Scientists issued warnings. They drew hazard maps showing the exact path a lahar would take. They told the government that Armero was in grave danger. The catastrophe, as volcanologist Barry Voigt would later write, was caused purely and simply by cumulative human error, by misjudgment, indecision, and bureaucratic short-sightedness. The warnings from scientists got lost in government ministries. The risk was downplayed. The public was never properly informed. That night, Nevado del Ruiz erupted. It was a relatively small eruption, but it was enough to melt the glaciers at its summit. A series of lahars tore down the mountain. In the middle of the night, a 30-foot wall of concrete-like mud slammed into the sleeping town of Armero, killing over 23,000 people instantly, burying them alive. The world woke up to images of unthinkable horror. The most haunting was that of Omaira Sneechez, a 13-year-old girl pinned in the debris, trapped in the mud and water for 3 days. Rescue workers could not free her without amputating her legs, and they lacked the surgical equipment to do so. She remained conscious, spoke to rescuers and journalists, and then she died. Her quiet, televised death became a global symbol of a preventable disaster. Armero wasn't destroyed by a volcano. It was destroyed by a failure to listen, a failure to prepare, a failure to act on a known threat. For the scientists at the USG's Cascades Volcano Observatory, Armero was not a foreign disaster. It was a preview. They looked at their own maps of Mount Rainier, at the town of Orting sitting exactly where Armero sat, and they felt a cold dread. They knew that if Rainier unleashed a major lahar, Orting could become America's Armero. The only difference would be that this time, they could not say they weren't warned. The lessons from Armero are the reason these drills in Orting exist. If you believe this story is a vital warning that needs to be heard, like this video and share it with someone you care about. Knowledge is the first line of defense. The ghost of Armero forced a question that could no longer be ignored. If a lahar came, how would anyone get out? The answer is the single most terrifying number in Orting's entire emergency plan: 40 minutes. Scientists at the USG's calculate that if a major lahar breaks from Rainier's west flank, the first wave of sirens will give residents a window of just 40 to 60 minutes before the flow reaches the town. Not hours. Minutes. Imagine the chaos. An alarm sounds that you've only ever heard in drills. It's a wailing, alien tone, designed to cut through any other noise. You have 40 minutes to save your family. What do? The first instinct of every modern American is to get in the car. In Orting, that instinct is a death sentence. The town's geography works against it. It sits in a valley floor, a topographical bathtub with only a few roads leading out and up to the surrounding high ground. During a panic, those roads and the bridges crossing the Puyallup and Carbon rivers would become gridlocked in seconds. A town of 9,000 people, plus visitors and commuters, all trying to flee at once. It would be a parking lot of doomed souls, waiting to be buried. The planners knew this. They had seen the aftermath of Armero, where people died in their cars. The conclusion was stark, and it completely inverted modern emergency response. In Orting, cars are not the solution. They are part of the problem. The only way to survive is to abandon your vehicle and walk. Or run. This is the brutal logic behind the drills. At the sound of the siren, the entire population must have a pre-programmed instinctive response to move on foot and to move uphill. The town has designated evacuation routes, painted on the streets with Lahar evacuation route signs. They lead out of the valley and up the steep hillsides on either side. Every school, every business, every municipal building has a plan. They drill it over and over until it is second nature. For the children, the drills are part of the school year, as normal as a fire drill, but with vastly higher stakes. Teachers lead them out of the buildings in orderly lines, not back to buses, but along sidewalks and trails leading out of the hazard zone. In older iterations of the drill, before better infrastructure was in place, high schoolers would walk to a designated link-up zone. Older students with cars would be waiting, holding up fingers to show how many empty seats they had, maximizing transport efficiency to get younger kids up the hill faster. It was a piece of desperate, ingenious, community-based logistics. But one obstacle remained a terrifying bottleneck. For years, students from Orting's elementary and middle schools, the smallest and slowest evacuees, had to cross State Route 162, a busy, 4-lane highway, at street level to reach their designated safe zone. Imagine hundreds of panicked children trying to cross a major road as sirens wail and adults are fleeing. It was a disaster waiting to happen within a disaster. This is where the story of Orting's resilience truly shines. It's the story of a second-grade teacher named Marianne Smith. For years, she and other parents and teachers looked at that highway crossing with dread. They imagined their students trying to make that crossing during a real event. In 2001, they formed a nonprofit group called Bridge for Kids. Their goal was simple and astronomically ambitious: build a dedicated pedestrian evacuation bridge over the highway, just for the children. For over 2 decades, they fought for it. They lobbied local politicians. They appealed to state legislators. They wrote grants. They held fundraisers. They never gave up. They were moms and teachers who refused to accept that a highway should be the thing that determined if their children lived or died. It took 28 years of relentless advocacy. But in January of 2025, construction finally began on the Bridge for Kids, a multi-million-dollar piece of infrastructure built for one purpose: to give sprinting children a few extra precious minutes. The bridge is a testament in steel and concrete to the community's refusal to accept the unacceptable. It is a structure paid for by the ghost of Omira Snenchez. It is love, weaponized against geology. Of course, a walking evacuation is only possible if you know the threat is coming. The 40-minute window exists for one reason: a network of sophisticated electronic sentinels scattered across the unforgiving upper slopes of Mount Rainier. The system is called the Rainier Lahar Detection System, or ERLDS, and it is Orting's invisible lifeline. Managed by the USG's Cascades Volcano Observatory, the system is a series of robotic tripwires. But instead of wires, they use sound. Special sensors, called acoustic flow monitors, or AFMs, are buried in concrete vaults along the major river valleys leading from the volcano. These aren't just microphones. They are tuned to listen for a very specific type of noise, the low-frequency ground vibration generated by a lahar. They are listening for the signature rumble of house-sized boulders tumbling and grinding against each other and a fast-moving slurry. It's a sound unlike an earthquake, a flood, or a normal landslide. When multiple AFMs detect this specific vibrational fingerprint in a specific sequence, one sensor, then the next one downriver, then the next, the system knows a large lahar is in motion. There are also physical tripwires strung across the valleys that will snap when a wall of mud hits them, sending an immediate signal. The moment the system confirms a threat, an automated signal is sent via radio telemetry to the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management. No human intervention is needed. The computers talk to each other. At the 24/7 warning centers, the confirmed alert automatically triggers the all-hazard alert broadcast sirens in the valley below. In Orting, there are 5 of these massive sirens. They are tested at noon on the first Monday of every month, a constant reminder of the sound that one day may not be a test. This entire sequence, from the mountain trembling to the sirens wailing in town, is designed to happen in minutes. It is this system that buys Orting its 40-minute head start. It is a marvel of predictive engineering, a shield built of data and seismic listening posts. But the scientists who built it are the first to admit its limitations. I'm going to pause here for a second. I know this is the second time I'm asking, but our analytics show that tens of thousands of you are watching this briefing right now, but aren't subscribed. If you find this analysis valuable, if you believe this kind of deep dive research is important, hitting that button is the single best way to ensure we can keep making it. Thank you. Now, back to the weaknesses in the shield. The ERLS is designed to detect large, valley-filling lahars. It may not pick up smaller, faster flows. The sensors themselves are in a hostile environment, subject to weather, rockfall, and the very events they are designed to detect. They require constant maintenance. And most importantly, the system buys time. It doesn't stop the threat. The warning is only as good as the response it triggers. If people freeze, if they get in their cars, if the evacuation routes are blocked, the 40-minute warning is just 40 minutes of knowing your fate is sealed. The system is a race against physics, and the stopwatch is held by the mountain. It takes a certain kind of person to willingly lead a community that lives with this kind of permanent existential threat. Josh Penner is that person. He served as the mayor of Orting from 2018 to 2024 and is now a state representative. His motivation for taking the job is a perfect encapsulation of Orting's psychology. In an interview, he admitted, "I was terrified of volcanoes growing up. I used to have nightmares. So of course I moved to the community that's the face of Mount Rainier and became the mayor." It is a stunning paradox. A man who fears the mountain chooses to live at its feet and take responsibility for the lives of his neighbors. This isn't denial. It's the opposite. It's a kind of radical acceptance. The people of Orting, by and large, are not living in ignorance. They are hyper-aware. The mountain is not just scenery. It is a character in their daily lives. They see the evacuation route signs on their commute. They hear the monthly siren test. Their children come home talking about the Lahar drill. The threat is woven into the fabric of the town. This deep integration of risk is a deliberate strategy, championed for decades by scientists like Carolyn Dreger of the USCs. She was a key figure in creating the Living with a Volcano in Your Backyard outreach program, which sought to transform the relationship between communities and their geological threats. The philosophy is that you cannot engineer away every risk. You cannot build a wall high enough to stop a major lahar. What you can do is build a resilient culture, a community that understands the threat, respects it, and knows exactly what to do when the worst happens. Orting is the national test case for this philosophy. In April 2026, the region held another massive drill involving not just Orting, but communities across East Pierce County. More than 45,000 students and staff from multiple school districts participated. While Orting kids practiced their well-worn walking routes, schools outside the immediate inundation zone practice shelter-in-place protocols for the volcanic ash that would fall from an actual eruption. Multiple city emergency operation centers were activated, like the one led by Chief Scott Ingle of the Pile-Up Police Department, testing the regional coordination that would be essential in a real event. This isn't just a town practicing. It's an entire region rehearsing for the apocalypse. The drills, the sirens, the bridge, the constant public education. It is a monumental, multi-generational effort. But it all leads back to a single, deeply unsettling question. Is it enough? Has Orting, through sheer force of will and decades of planning, solved the problem of how to live in the shadow of one of the world's most dangerous volcanoes? Or are they simply participating in the most elaborate, well-organized, and ultimately futile survival ritual in human history? The uncomfortable truth is that no one knows. The plans are designed to counter the most probable scenarios. A large, unheralded lahar from the west flank. But volcanoes are masters of the improbable. A lahar could be bigger than the models predict. It could come from a different flank, affecting travel times. A major earthquake on the Seattle Fault could trigger the lahar and simultaneously destroy the very roads and bridges needed for evacuation, rendering the entire plan moot. The system is designed for one disaster at a time. Nature rarely offers such courtesies. There is a contingent of geologists and risk assessment experts who argue, quietly, that towns like Orting should never have been zoned for residential development in the first place, that the risk is not mitigatable, that the only truly safe plan is managed retreat. But how do you tell 9,000 people to abandon their homes, their community, their history, because of a threat that might not manifest in their lifetime or their children's lifetime? The Electron Lahar was 500 years ago. Geologically, that is the blink of an eye. In human terms, it is an eternity. People do not make life-altering decisions based on 500-year-old disasters. They make them based on mortgage rates, school districts, and the view from their back porch. And the view from Orting is, unequivocally, spectacular, on a clear day, Mount Rainier. Or Tahoma, as it is known to the region's indigenous peoples, dominates the horizon. It is a vision of sublime, majestic power. That beauty is the town's greatest amenity and its greatest threat. Living in Orting is a daily act of cognitive dissonance, a wager that the beauty of today will not be consumed by the violence of tomorrow. The town of Orting and the drills it performs are not just a local curiosity. They are a profound statement about humanity's relationship with risk in the 21st century. They have looked a fundamentally uninsurable risk squarely in the eye and refused to blink. They have replaced denial with drills, complacency with concrete bridges. They have chosen to trust preparation over probability. And before we reach our final thoughts, our last reminder: you've made it this far into the analysis, which means you understand the gravity and importance of these topics. Don't let an algorithm decide what you see next. Subscribe, and guarantee you're part of the next briefing. The story of Orting is not a story with an easy ending. There is no final victory, no moment where they can say the work is done and the town is safe. The mountain will always be there. The hydrothermally altered rock will continue to rot. The glaciers will continue to hold their potential energy. The threat is permanent. The drills are a promise to never forget that. The children who walk those evacuation routes are carrying on a tradition born from the tragedy of Armero. They are the living embodiment of a lesson bought in Colombian mud and paid for in Washingtonian vigilance. They are walking not just for themselves, but for the 23,000 who could not. Whether this extraordinary effort is an act of profound wisdom or desperate folly